All right, what's going on out there, YouTube? Is that my brother Hyphy out there? What's going on? All right, Bodro, what's happening? Want to talk a little bit about what's going on with these heavyweights, man. Um, just finished listening to 78's live stream, and I'm like really disappointed in Tyson Fury, man. This guy is one of the biggest con artists of all time, man. He really pulled the wool over the eyes of the people, man. Um, After putting on such a great show with Deontay Wilder in their fight in December, it's a shame that the man wants to leave matters unsettled and leave the fans hanging because not only did people get behind the event, the people got behind Fury, they got behind Wilder. You know, it was like everybody going for who they like and a quality matchup for a change at the top of the division. And seeing with the outcome being what it was, they didn't give Wilder his just due by calling it a knockout and everything. And this man was able to finish the fight. Matters are unsettled. And it's only natural that we get a rematch to settle matters. And it doesn't look like that's going to happen now. The games that Fury has played over these past few weeks with the BS contract negotiation ploy with Top Rank and ESPN and all of that, as opposed to just getting out there and saying, hey, you know, we got this deal, let's get it done. Because from what I understand, he had the contract with Wilder and all he had to do was sign it and the deal was set. But now it's looking like it's not going to happen. And the hands and powers that be behind the scenes pulling strings from certain angles seem to want this to be the case. They don't want the best fighting the best. They don't want quality matchups. They want to continue to rip the fans off, rip the public off, and put on these events where they're just, you know, shaking you down for your dollars. You buying tickets for a match. It's not cool at all. Um, Personally, I feel like I stop short of saying like a boycott, but it's like we don't have to give any credence to uh, people who don't seem to have our best interests at heart. Let's see, Hypey saying, you know, they were extremely close to signing contracts because they informed Barclays Center that they'd be reserving that specific date. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this deal was pretty much done. The funny thing was is that just like the first fight, they were able to come to an agreement so quickly. They made a deal and they got it done, and they started promoting on. You know, even when Fury was fighting his second tune-up fight, Wilder went to the UK and you know he was there and he met with media there. He gave interviews. He was at Fury's fight. He got in the ring. It was a total professional promotion for an event that was upcoming. They could have done the same thing this time around, even better, because these guys had a hell of a fight. People tuned in and people wanted to see more. So it's like, why not give the fans what they're looking for? I don't understand why they would even allow, when I say they, it would be Fury and his people, would allow someone like Bob Arum to come in and interfere with what was going on, because no matter how you slice it, Fury was going to have equal footing as far as pay. He had built up some type of interest in the U.S. from the U.S. fans, so that was already established. And he was fighting our heavyweight champion, who's from the U.S., where his notoriety and his legacy would be built on all of that. That's positive stuff. It was far more than anything he could have done in the UK. And now he's just flipped over on his back and rolled over. It's like, man, who are you? What type of human being are you that you would, go through such lengths to do this? I remember earlier in 78 Stream, he said that, if the man wanted to kind of take a step back and say, hey, you know, Wilder was a lot tougher than I thought. Maybe I need a couple more fights, get myself in better shape. Maybe I could get my timing better or whatever. People can respect that. They could get behind that and say, hey, well, you know what? Do your thing, man. The deal is still there. Let's say we give you a two-fight effort or something to get yourself come around, get your timing back, get yourself back together. But that's not even what he did. And it's like, how do you now respect the man who, like I said, he had the contract, had it for a week, and then just kind of ran off and did this other thing and allowed Bob Arum and Top Rank and ESPN get involved and really just, throw salt in the wounds of what they were trying to sew together. So I really don't have any respect for him for that. It's another ploy that seems to be taking place in the other divisions where we're seeing the same when you talk about Earl Spence maybe facing Terrence Crawford one day. There's someone in the middle of that, someone in the way of that. It's not taking place. Um, Other divisions where things can get generated, down there where Tank is and Lomachenko and those guys should be fighting each other. It's time for these men to step up and fight one another. Stop brandishing around. I'm the best. I'm undefeated. My record is this and my record is that. Start facing each other. Let's see who is really the person with the goods. It's one of those things that if the NBA tried to sell you the New York Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers every night, nobody would tune in and watch that. Not to dump on the teams, but those are the teams that kind of have the worst records at this time. And it's like, you want to see quality, you want to see the best. You want to see Golden State, you want to see Milwaukee, you want to see those teams that are really vying for the championship. But imagine them trying to pass a true champion off as the teams that are at the bottom of the divisions. And that was only who was on television or something. Who would tune in for that? Nobody. So why are we being force fed these mismatches of young upstarts and you know current title holders and everything who are just kind of dancing around quality opposition and looking only to face someone where they can continue to pad their purse and pad their records? The fans are suffering as a result of that, and the sport is suffering as a result of that. And I'm not in support of that at all. I made a suggestion that, particularly in the heavyweight division, maybe we should stop mentioning uh, certain fighters' names at all. We can refer to their country, we can refer to them being across the pond or whatever, but just stop name dropping. Stop all of that, giving them publicity and coverage, because even when you spew their name, it is a form of promotion. And we don't need to do that. Wilder is the name that should be off our lips and tongues because this man has stepped up in the sport and achieved a great deal in a short period of time as far as his time as far as being a boxer. Um, and his accomplishment, going to the Olympics, you know, turning pro and then eventually becoming a world champion with such limited, so-called limited talent and limited time in the sport as far as learning the sport and everything. I think he's an outstanding person. He's well represented and well spoken for his family. He is very much active in his community. He's doing good things. That's what you should be promoting. Not someone out here that's trying to give you a song and dance, someone that's giving you smoke and mirrors, someone that's giving you rhetoric, someone that's giving you sound bites and everything, which is kind of like internet social media coverage. It's like crazy. Um, I live in Chicago, and every year at the end of the summer, they have a parade here called the Bud Billiken Parade. It's a back to school, kids back to school parade, and they typically have, different guests and sponsors who participate in the parade. And this past August, when they held the parade in 2018, Deontay Wilder was here. And there was no media coverage or anything that said promoting that Saturday morning's parade that the heavyweight champion of the world would be in Chicago. So I'm actually here and missed him. I mean, what kind of mess is that? The heavyweight champion of the world coming to your town, being a part of a back to school event and everything, and that's for schools, is promoting for the kids and everything, and they did not put this man on any airwaves. They didn't put his name in the paper. They didn't say anything advertising him whatsoever. Man, I was hot when I found that out. I was like, that was a total disgrace. So, but that's what I'm talking about. It's like, had he been someone else, a loudmouth who was in trouble with the law and this and that, of course they would have said something. They would have had some kind of coverage, and it would have been negative press. But at the same time, again, even negative press can be uh, a manufactured to be a marketing tool. So this is what we have to look at. And I just think that going forward, when I talk about the sport, when I talk about the heavyweight division in particular, I will mention his name unless there's a guy signed to fight him. I won't mention other names. I'll maybe throw numbers out there, the number 2 guy, the number 4 guy, the number 8 guy, and people will have to look them up in the ratings, to see who these guys are, because I am no longer going to speak the names of these duckers and these guys who are working their hardest at preventing the sport from progressing. I can't do that. I can't support that anymore. And I actually put a challenge out there to the other channels that they do the same. It's like, because we've already shown with the LDBC in particular that the way you cover the sport, the way that you speak and bring daily news on a regular, that you have a voice. And just looking at 78's channel this evening, he had like damn near 600 people in his chat. That's wonderful. It's like there's a vibe, there's a pulse out there for the community of boxing. And so when you have that type of ear to the ground, you need to utilize that and make it work in its most positive manner. You have to be able to reach these people and give them the truth. Because if you sell them lies and BS, they'll drink that juice if that's all that's coming down the pipe. But if you have truth and people get a taste of that truth and they find that, wow, this is good, I want more. That's what you have to deliver. And the sport hasn't been delivering this, so I want to do my part. That's why I'm on live tonight. This is actually my first live that I'm doing, and I appreciate. Shout out to the brothers that's out there listening to me and sisters that's out there listening. Even if someone hasn't left a comment, I ask that please do leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know how you feel about this because I'm not out here to grandstand. I'm not out here to, try to, make a stage show for Stormy B, man. I'm actually out here to talk the sport and see if I could do my part in making this be a better experience. So I'm really looking forward to people sharing with me and giving me ideas. And, eventually I'll have, opportunities where someone can come on and chop it up with me because this is the kind of thing that needs to be done. But I don't think we should continue to drop the names of people who don't have your best interest as a boxing follower and fan in at their interest at the end of the day. Um, Too much of that has gone on. And with the social media powers that we have now, we can force what we would like to have if we're willing to stand pat and stand up on that. So that's how I feel regarding that. Let me look at this super chat. Hyphy says, stop putting their names in video titles. Exactly. Exactly. I think I titled this "The State of the Heavyweight Division." I was gonna use a thumbnail photo of Wilder and Fury, but I decided to put my old ugly mug on here so people could see who I am. I'm Stormy B Man. I've been out there on other guys' channels. Shout out to everyone who has had me on their channels. I don't want to name names right now because I don't want to leave anybody out, but people have been very generous to allow me to come on their channels and talk about boxing. And I have been saying I'll be doing more videos, but I've been supporting other people so much that I haven't really done anything on my own accord. And it's not because I'm being lazy or anything. It's just because, believe it or not, I've been going from channel to channel in the LDBC community supporting everyone. Whether it's been Trill Boxing Talk in the morning, Fanon, it's been World Breaker, it's been Act Reacher, it's been, whoever. It's like I've been supporting everybody. So I've been giving donations. I've been doing what I can, doing my part to just further the community and develop it greater. So I'm not on here for all of that, but people have been subscribing to my channel, and I do feel a responsibility now to give you a little content because you've been so astute at giving me that support. And I thank everyone who subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate that. um, i'm not a I'm not really a person. I don't like to speak too much, but if I feel passionate about something, I can get going, and I would just like to bounce off of other people's ears, and heads what they like to talk about when it comes down to this. But I do feel like my video tonight is just talking about the state of the heavyweight division and where we found ourselves to be with people avoiding the quality matches that fans want to see. I mean, the fights are like right there, guys. I mean, we have an era right now where there is talent and we have champions, multiple champions, and guys who could lay claim to being the best in the sport, and they're not facing each other. So, how can you iron things out? How can you work it out if these guys are going to continue to dance around and look over there for somebody or look over there for somebody, but not face who's directly in front of you? What is that? I mean, I remember back in 1991 when Riddick Bowe threw the heavyweight title in the garbage after winning the he won the unified championship undisputed from Evander Holyfield. And within a couple of weeks, he threw the WBC belt in the garbage because he didn't want to face Lennox Lewis. And the funny thing about that was, like, the Lennox Lewis fight was green lit because they had a final four. Holyfield was to face Bo. Lewis faced Razor Ruddock, with the winners to meet for the championship. And and Evander went into that final four as the undisputed champion. And those guys were ranked 1 through 4. And Ruddock and Lewis did their part. Holyfield, Bo did their part. And then Bo reneged and threw the WBC belt in the garbage when he was supposed to face Lennox Lewis. And I think that robbed the sport of having a dominant heavyweight champion for the rest of the decade, because those two men were at the top of the sport for the rest of the decade, but at the same time, they never faced each other. And the WBC ended up awarding Lennox Lewis the belt, but he didn't win it in the ring because the guy didn't face him. And Riddick Bowe, even to this day, he makes all these different comments about why the fight didn't happen or whatever. But now I know in his heart he regrets he didn't step up to the plate and do his part. Holyfield fought Lennox Lewis twice. He fought Riddick Bowe 3 times. And Holyfield was the smallest guy out of all 3 of the guys. So it's like, come on, man. You got the guy who came up from cruiserweight, who will go down in history with a better legacy than the rest of the guys who had titles, because he was willing to step up and fight, take guys on, win, lose, or draw. And with those 2 men, Bo and Lewis, they could have really had something special. Maybe a multiple fight deal. They had a history going back to the Olympics. These 2 men could have really set the sport in a positive direction. But that thing about throwing that title in the garbage, it's almost like what's happening today. You've got one champion who's willing to fight everybody. And then you have other people who have belts that don't want to face anybody, but is always talking and bluffing like they want that smoke, that they want to do this, and that I've done this. You haven't done anything. You went around and collected titles that were vacated and stripped, you know? So that's BS, man. So, we need to get behind the person who is really representing. And that's Deontay Wilder. And that's a name that I don't mind saying on my channel. When he had that interview with Radio Raheem, and he spoke about the conditions that our people have found ourselves going through until this day, and spoke with such passion and spoke with such energy of letting you know, man, listen, this is for real. I take what I do seriously. I take what I have in my hand and I hold it with value. That day, I became a fan of that man for life, because he spoke greater than the sport. He spoke of everything that allows us to enjoy sport, because sport is an escape. It's an out to our everyday mundane lives, stressful lives, exciting lives, or whatever. It's an out. It's like cracking open a cold one after a hard day's work, when you could sit down in front of your television, or you go to the sports bar and you turn on and you want to watch your favorite sport or whatever. That's an escape. Well, this man spoke with such compassion. How could you not get behind that? How could you not get behind someone who is out there not only delivering the blows, but he takes them too? But he's doing it because he believes in something. He believes he's the best, and he wants to represent being the best for you and me. How can you not support that? This is not smoke and mirrors. This is a man that's going out there doing it. And he does it with an excitement. He does it with such finality that it's something that hasn't been seen, you know, knocking guys out, man. When you watch a boxing match, that's what you watch it for. You watch it for a knockout. You want to see somebody go. And this man delivers, Deontay Wilder. Uh, I love the fact that he's level-handed. Level-headed. He's a family man. Uh, he represents his hometown and himself very well. We need more of that in the sport. We don't need the guys throwing the money up in front of the cameras and throwing, you know, bills, making it rain and all that foolishness and everything, walking around talking about their cars and their homes and their thoughts. What is that? All that stuff comes to an end, man. But when you got a person who with integrity, someone that has pride, someone that has that due diligence, that they work for what they're doing. They bleed and they sweat for it. That's the real man. That's the man that you can get behind. The blue collar guy. Huh? Not these guys that are just out there, they're flashes in the pan, man. Because there's always somebody that's hungrier than you, especially after you've got a little bit to eat, right? I mean, you were starving at one time and you came up. Now you dress a little better. You live in a different zip code. You drive something more luxurious. So you ain't as hungry as that other cat who's where you used to be. Huh? And he gonna take it from you one day. Keith Thurman. Huh? So this is what I have to say about that, man. Let me read this. If something new comes out about these guys, no more than 5 minutes needs to be spent speaking about it. And we shouldn't see that news flooding our timeline. Absolutely, Hyphy. Man, I agree with that 100%. Matter of fact, you could save like the news and sound bites for those idiots at the end of your streams, at the end of your videos. It's like, oh, by the way, such and such is signed to fight on April whatever coming up. We'll have more later. And that be it. It's like, why are you gonna sit up there and talk about his promoter said this today? This guy is gonna he's thinking about facing XYZ. Sign contracts, get dates and venues, and then we can say who you are and what you're doing. Outside of that, I ain't got no interest in just trying to promote somebody who's robbing the people. I mean, that is just ridiculous. I'm not going to do it. I encourage others not to do it, and it can be done. I mean, this is what it's all about, and this is what I have to say. Uh, I can just I can continue to go on and on and on, but I don't like to, be repeating myself or anything like that. What are you guys, Hyphy and Bodro? If you're out there still, you guys got anything else to add to that? Maybe you can type something in there for me and I can follow up. There's no boxing news. We can talk about other stuff. I know absolutely nothing about UFC, but I know in UFC the best fight the best. That's good enough for me. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Um, I don't know a lot about the UFC myself, and I have like this app. Man, I could get everything. I tell you, if I were a UFC guy, I could see everything because this app I have, it gives you all of the UFC channels. I've got about 20 or 30 UFC stations, and it's like I don't watch it. Every time I'm flipping through, there's somebody smashing somebody in a cage or something. It's crazy. But maybe I ought to start tuning in. Maybe I ought to start listening in a little more with PK boxing and MMA because he the man when it comes to that. But I'll tell you something. The UFC puts on good matches. I have heard nothing but positive feedback when it comes to that. The UFC does put on quality matches and the best fight the best in that sport. And that's why they're surpassing boxing to a certain degree as far as viewership. Who wants to tune into a live event? Because we know that the boxing matches are, you know, mismatches for the most part. You look at the fight cards like from last weekend. It's like a couple of those matches, man. They were on television, but you're like, these guys. I'd rather see the favorite guy fighting someone who would be equally matched to him, not just somebody that's brought in there. Look like they rolled the guy up out of a bar and put some gloves on him and some trunks. I mean, look at Bermain Stavern. I mean, that guy when he came into that match against Joe Joyce, man, it looked like they rolled that guy out of the bed, man. He how there's no way he trained for that fight coming in there looking like that. So if he was 270 something pounds, what was he before he started training? 3 something? Come on, man. That was ridiculous. This guy and he looked like me. I'm not in shape like that to get in the ring. And if I just got in the ring tomorrow and I was on live TV, it was like be like, damn, look at Stormy B, man. He ain't his stomach hanging over his trunks. He didn't train. That's what it looked like with Bermain Stavern. And this guy was a former heavyweight champ. What the hell is that, man? You know, it's like, why are you robbing the people? Nobody wants to see that shit. Excuse my language. But nobody wants to see that. You come into the ring, you give your best. If you don't have a best to give, don't get your behind in there. There's a better way to make a living, dude. They have pie eating contests. That's where you should have been. It's a pie eating contest or a hot dog contest or something like that. Coming in there looking like that, man. And what's worse is that Joe Joyce is a guy that is very limited. And my goodness, if there's anybody with decent talent, it's over for him. So that just shows you how poor the sport is. That a guy like that can get juiced on television. He's been on television twice in the past couple of months. It's like I'd rather see Deontay Wilder, right? Let's see. Can you give me a few minutes on James Toney? This is a guy that came up from middleweight and beat Holyfield. The fact he was rarely hurt against good heavyweights is amazing. Oh yeah, hyphy. James Toney, man, outstanding boxer, man. Um, James Toney was trained by Bowie Fischer, which was oh, excuse me, not Bowie Fischer. Bowie Fischer trained Bernard Hopkins. Um, Forgive me, I forget his trainer's name right now because I got a lot of names going on in my head. But James Toney was a student of boxing as well, where I think everyone knows the old background of Tyson coming up with Customato and studying old fight films and stuff like that because Jimmy Jacobs and Bill Caton, they had the library of all these old fights that ESPN now has. The old fighters, black and white films and stuff going all the way back to, you know, Dempsey and Willard and all those guys. But James Toney was another. Bill Miller, that's who James Toney's boxing coach was. I couldn't think of the name. Forgive me. Bill Miller. And he had James Toney looking at those old fights and everything too. And one of the things that James Toney really picked up on was old fighters like Ezzard Charles, guys who had very good defensive qualities that they could stand in front of the opponent and make the shots miss by inches and glance off the shoulders and things like that and be in a position to counter, roll and counter and fight on the inside, uh, throw short, sharp punches. That's what James Toney was very efficient at. And, you know, when he fought at middleweight, he had really fast hands. He had decent power because in high school, he was like a 200-pound guy. So he shrank himself down to make middleweight when he turned pro as a boxer, which is amazing within itself. Um, James Toney had all of the ability in the world, but he was a fighter. You know, even though he had great boxing skills, he was a fighter, meaning like he'd fight you in the street, he'd fight you in the ring, he'd fight you in the ring after fighting in the street, or vice versa. That's how James Toney was. He had that mentality. And as he began to have his own success, I believe that he began to cut the corners on his training and conditioning. He liked to spar. So you always have to remember in the gym is where you take most of the punishment, not in the actual match. Because in the match, when the lights are on, you're very keen and aware of what's going on and you don't want to be embarrassed. So you usually bring your game. But in the gym, when you're working on stuff, when you're not at your best, you're having a bad day, you want to just work out some anguish or whatever, you're taking shots in the gym. And that's where a lot of damage occurs. And most people don't think about that, which is why the conditioning aspect, you can spar quality rounds, but you want in the gym, it's about your conditioning because the more honed the body is in boxing, as far as your physical conditioning and your mental conditioning, the less punishment you'll take in an action. Because when you're sharp, you're sharp. You know, you're ready. Your spontaneity is there. Uh, James Toney had all of that till he got to 168. When he got to 168, he found a way to cut corners as far as making weight and stuff like that, rehydrating and everything. He wasn't doing it the best way. So by the time he faced Roy Jones Jr., he kind of wasn't, you know, that real hungry guy anymore. But Roy embarrassed him, and he always wanted Roy back, but Roy wouldn't give him a give back. So it's like he blew it, kind of like the heavyweight fight we had in December. You had that chance to get that guy out of there. You really did. They didn't give it to you, but it should not have come down to that anyway. If you had made the adjustments that you ended up making late earlier, what your coaches was trying to tell you, Deontay Wilder I'm speaking about, then you could have had that success earlier because it was there the whole night. It's just that, you know, it took you a while to finally do what you had to do. But back to James Toney, uh, the fact that he was able to go all the way up to heavyweight, he wasn't a big heavyweight. But I'll tell you something. In the film Ali, James Toney played Joe Frazier, which was an amazing casting because that's about the size of a heavyweight he is, Joe Frazier size. Joe Frazier fought in around 205, 210, something like that. And anything above that, he was out of shape or whatever. James Toney could have fought at that weight 205 to 202, something like that, and been very proficient. But he allowed himself to balloon higher than that because he liked to eat, but he could still fight. Um, his style would have always given Holyfield trouble because James Toney was a body puncher. And what most fighters never realized about Evander Holyfield was that his body was his Achilles. It banging him to the body. The fighters that fought him and banged him to the body got him out of there. Two fighters, Riddick Bowe, James Toney. They worked that body. George Foreman was trying to knock him out on the chin. Mike Tyson was trying to knock him out on the chin. Ray Mercer was trying to knock him out on the chin. Uh, a lot of the fighters he fought were trying to knock him out on the chin. The man could take a punch. He really could. And he'd fight even harder. Like if you hit him hard and hurt him a little bit, it was like opening up a can of whoop butt, on you because Evander had that type of spirit about himself. But James Toney was very smart. He banged Holyfield to the body to the point that Holyfield didn't realize his legs was leaving him. And by the time they ended up stopping the fight, it looked like Holyfield was a damaged, shot fighter. I don't think he was shot. It was James Toney took it out of him because of the way he worked his body. I think James Toney worked Holyfield's body better than Riddick Bowe did. But Bowe, being a bigger man, got a more effective, result because Bowe was 6'5", 230, 240 pounds. James Toney, what is James Toney, like 5'10", and when he fought Evander, he might have been 212, 215, something like that. I don't know. But it was a I hated to see because Holyfield was my favorite fighter. I hated to see him go in there and fight James Toney the way he did. He was supposed to box James Toney. He went in there thinking, "Oh, this guy's smaller than me. I'm going to overwhelm him," and that was the wrong thing to do. Vasily Jirov tried that; it didn't work. Most fighters, even what was his name, the Nigerian brother, when he went in there against James Toney, he thought he was gonna just bang Toney out of there, and he got boxed to death. So that was one of those things where his skills came to the forefront. Uh, let's see, Brown on boxing. Damn, I was about to sub, but I realized I already have. Salute, Stormy B Man. Well, salute to you too, brother. Thank you so much for your generous comment there, Brown on boxing. Hyphy says it was amazing how he could drop his left hand, but he'd roll that shoulder just in time and then counter you with a right. Yeah, because when you fight in that manner, see, remember, I was talking about the old fighting style, um, Ezra Charles and those guys. If you look at the fights that are in black and white film, right? Look at these guys and how close in proximity they are to each other. Guys today be standing like 10 feet away from each other and they circle. It's ridiculous because you can't get anything off if you're standing way away from the guy. The old fighters used to stand within punching range and they would react to what you do. Like if you're punching at me, I'll react to that. If I'm punching at you, you react to what I'm doing, but all within a certain amount of distance. That's why they always talked about the power being in a 6-inch punch or 8-inch punch, where it travels a short distance, but the impact and snap was very effective because you threw it with the proper leverage. You didn't waste energy. This is why those guys could fight 10, 15 rounds easy with no problem because they're not expending all that energy running around the ring. Now, you had fighters who moved around the ring like a Willie Pep and those guys, but still a man who would stay within range, you know, and listen. The best place to be in a storm is in the eye of it. On the outside of the storm is where everything gets ripped to hell. You understand? So if you're standing in close proximity to me, I can stop what you're doing. I could see what you're doing. I could feel you breathing. I can feel your body, the energy. And that's the thing about fighting in close. And James Toney mastered that, which is why when he fought certain fighters who were aggressive, he didn't mind them getting close to him because he knew what to do to them. He knew where to hit them. He knew where to place his punches. He knew how to anticipate, because when you throw certain punches, if you're a certain individual, you throw certain punches, you get to a point after a couple of rounds of filling a guy out, you know where his punches are coming from. And your defense can be set based on that, you know? And James Toney was a master of that. He had that very much down pat. Uh, let's see. Bo Drew says, do you think Toney versus Holyfield will stop prematurely? No, I don't think that fight will stop prematurely at all, Bo Drew, because I think that Evander Holyfield would have ended up flat on his back if his trainers hadn't thrown in the towel and rescued him. Holyfield didn't like going out like that, but definitely he would have gone to the canvas because he was getting hit so clean and couldn't stop it. Once Toney got into his rhythm and had taken Holyfield's legs, Holyfield was just there to be hit. Now, Holyfield said he had had a shoulder surgery or something going into that fight and that his shoulder was going out and all of that. But I'll tell you something, man. In boxing, there's one philosophy that has stood the test of time. That philosophy is the jab. The jab can win you a fight. The jab can keep you safe in a fight. The jab can be an offensive weapon. The jab could be a defensive weapon, and Evander didn't like to use the jab as he had gotten further on in his career. When he was a cruiserweight, he used the jab fiercely. When he first turned heavyweight, he used the jab fiercely and combination punching. But um, after settling in at heavyweight and facing some of the more heavier dynamic fighters in the division, Evander began to load up on shots a lot. And you have to know, when you're fighting a younger guy or even a smaller guy, loading up on your shots, it becomes about timing. And as you age, the younger guy has the advantage in timing, you know. Evander was very good with timed punches. He had a counter right hand that would knock your head off and a very good left hook at the end of combinations. But James Toney, who is a fighter and who could feel punches coming, feel punches going, Evander was he was like dead. He was like the most kind of guy that could make James Toney look good. Evander was a style just made for him. And they could have did that at cruiserweight. They could have did that at heavyweight. They could have did that at light heavyweight. It would have been the same thing. That's what I think. So, do you by chance know why Toney left Bill? Actually, I don't know why he left Bill Miller. It could be because Bill Miller may have saw James Toney not wanting to put the work in the gym like he had done at an earlier time in his career. Um, I remember hearing some of their conversations in between rounds. Now, I didn't know Bill Miller personally, but I have a great deal of respect for the kind of coaching he did. He reminds me of my mentor, D.D. Brown, here in Chicago. I, you know, James, he had a bit of an attitude, and Bill Miller probably saw that he took him as far as he could go. And if he want to be his own man and all of that, hey, you let the guy do what he gonna do. You know, that's what I like about Nazir Rahim. It's like, he not Nazir Rahim. The coach from Philadelphia that used to work with Bernard Hopkins also. Um, he has a philosophy that as a grown man, you're responsible for the decisions you make. You know, if I'm assisting you, you have to allow me to do my job. And I totally believe in that philosophy because this in the sport of boxing, it's a hurt business. And guess what? Your life is in my hands. My decisions as a coach affect what's going on too. So primarily when we're working at this, I'm looking out for your best interests. And nobody can look out for you like yourself. But if you're paying me to look out for you, I've got to do my job. And that sometimes comes down to telling you you're a little full of yourself. You need to get your act together. You need to, focus up, you know. And sometimes when guys have a little success and got a little money in their pocket and everything, they don't want to hear that no more. You know, that's the truth. Bodru says Holmes used his jab for both offense and defense. Absolutely, man. Always said in my gym when I work with guys, I said if I wanted to show a young heavyweight boxing film, I wouldn't show him Muhammad Ali. Reason being, Ali was an athlete who had gifts. Excuse me. Ali was an athlete who had gifts that were very rare. He had fast hands. He was fleet of foot. He had amazing reflexes. And therefore, he did a lot of things wrong, but could get away with them because of his athleticism. And when you're teaching boxing, it's about being technical. And Ali was able to adapt and do things because of his athleticism. If I were going to show and teach a boxer some film on a fighter, I show him two boxers in particular. I show him Larry Holmes, more of for the modern aspect of philosophy in boxing, and then I would show Joe Louis because Joe Louis's style is a style that it can work in any era and it can also work almost against any other style. But Larry Holmes, because Larry Holmes had the mobility that was it wasn't similar to Ali, but it was effective like Ali. He could move on his feet and on his toes and move around a little bit. But that left jab, man, it set up everything. And Larry Holmes would throw an uppercut on the inside. He knocked out a couple of guys with uppercuts, which was amazing. He had a very stinging right hand. It didn't have a lot of power on it, but he threw it very straight and he was very precise and accurate with his punches. But his left jab was pulverizing. He could use it in a manner of which he could keep you at bay, he could punish you, he could stop what you were throwing at him with that left, and he could just take over a round using that left hand. And when he got into his rhythm, it was beautiful. The way it would just shoot out, bang, bang. And Larry Holmes wasn't one of those guys that kept his hands low. He kept his hands up, you know. But that left jab that he had was amazing. One of the best jabs in the history of the sport, Larry Holmes. And only because he followed directly behind Muhammad Ali did he not get the credit that he sorely deserves as the heavyweight champion. Champion for 7.5 years. Larry Holmes was one hell of a champion, man. And he fought all comers. He even fought the young upstarts. Excuse me, like the Carla Truth Williams and the Tim Witherspoons and guys like that who were the younger generation of heavyweights coming up. He fought those guys. And some of those fights were very close, but it was due to his experience and the the know-how and capability that he had that could pull him through those fights. And remember, those fights were 15-round fights when he was fighting. Larry Holmes was a hell of a champion, man. And he always believed in taking a guy out into the later rounds and then finishing them off. Yeah, they okay to knock guys out early. That's fine. But when you give them a boxing lesson and you strip them of everything, because remember, when you go into that last third of the fight of a 15 rounder, that separates the men from the boys because all of your conditioning, all of your, your skills, that goes out the window. Then it becomes about how much you got in the old ticker, you know? That's when it becomes how much you got up here, where you figure you got to finish this fight, still keep yourself safe, but you want to prove yourself victorious over your opponent. And those 15 rounds, boy, I wish they would bring them back because you would really see a lot of guys today not last. 99% of trainers will train any fighter with buzz if the pay is decent. McGirt, Roach, Jackson, etc. I have just one more question. What guy do you think came the closest to defeating Floyd Mayweather besides El Chino Maidana? Jose Luis Castillo. In their first fight, um, when people talk about Floyd fighting great fighters of the past or whatever, one of the fighters that they say, he would have mopped the floor is Julio Cesar Chavez. Floyd would have mopped the floor with Julio Cesar Chavez. I disagree with that totally because Jorge, Jose Luis Castillo was a former, sparring partner. He was in the gym around Chavez a lot, and he fought not similar, but he did a lot of the things that Chavez did because he picked up on it from Chavez in the gym and being around. And when he fought Floyd the first time, a lot of what he did was effective. But imagine if it were actually Chavez, because Chavez did what he did great. One thing Chavez would do, because he had a very good chin, he could take whatever Floyd gave, but he would wear Floyd down to the body. And he did it to so many fighters. Camacho, Jose Luis Ramirez, Edwin Rosario, Meldrick Taylor. The only one he couldn't do it to was Pernell Whitaker. And the funny thing about that was Pernell Whitaker, being a defensive specialist, it wasn't the moving around that made it difficult for Chavez with Whitaker. It was the angles that Whitaker could fight from by standing right in front of the guy, like a James Toney. And the funny thing was, Sweet Pea Whitaker could punch harder to the body than people realize. He hurt Chavez to the body several times in their fight, and Chavez was trying to counter but couldn't get clean counters because of the angle Sweet Pea would get him. Sweet Pea had this thing he could do a dip, like just go straight down in a dip and come up punching and then step to the side. And he would turn fighters in circles. It would be like he's stepping around you. But what was happening is when you pick your feet up to move with him, you can't punch and move at the same time. In other words, you can't get leverage on your shots when your feet are moving like that. So Sweet Pea mastered that. Meldrick Taylor could move against Chavez, but Chavez banged him to the body to the point where he began to just stand there and take it. So did Camacho. But Camacho had a little more gas in the tank as far as moving, so he still moved for the entire fight against Chavez, but he took a beating for Chavez. He really took a bad beating from Chavez, Hector Camacho. So Yeah, I think Jose Luis Castillo gave Mayweather a very difficult fight in their first fight. In the second fight, Mayweather kind of knew what he was up against. He knew how to fight the guy then. But imagine that first fight being the actual Chavez. Chavez could probably really do some damage to Floyd because Floyd would give you aspects of touching him, but it was how guys tried to touch him. That shoulder roll and things like that. With a guy like Chavez, that don't mean anything because he would hit you wherever you gave him the shots to hit you. And when those punches land over a certain amount of time, and your hands drop and everything, next thing you know, your legs is going and he catch you. So I'm not saying he would stop Floyd because I think Floyd had enough heart, but Floyd would get banged up just like Meldrick Taylor did, except for Floyd. I don't know. He would fight smarter than Mel. Meldrick had fast hands, though. My goodness, Meldrick Taylor's hand speed was like faster than Sugar Ray Leonard, man. That guy had beautiful hand speed. What a fighter Meldrick Taylor was. And the Chavez fight totally ruined him. The Lou Duva and those guys, that's one of the things I didn't like about them with their fighters were they always put their fighters in tough. And for the most part, their fighters were tough enough to deal with things, but they also I think they ruined a couple of guys too. So Tyrell Biggs, Meldrick Taylor. I didn't like seeing what happened with those guys in their careers. And I'm not putting it all on the Luduva and the camp because they were great coaches and trainers. And Georgie Benton. Oh, Georgie Benton was a wonderful trainer. I love that guy and his philosophy with boxing. But I just feel like Meldrick Taylor, that guy was like you got to protect him, man. You got to protect your guy, and they kind of like they dropped the ball with Mel on that night with Chavez. They really did. Let's see. Bo Drew says Jesus Chavez gave Floyd some good work as well. Had him up against the ropes, beating his body. Yeah, uh, Chavez didn't have a lot of power though. Jesus Chavez, and the funny thing about Floyd is he would give you his body with the it was predicated on him expecting you a certain amount of what you were shelling out to him. So that being said, I think that uh that's another reason why you couldn't let Julio Cesar Chavez get you because he knew punch placement. Like guys talk about Earl Spence today and his punch placement. Julio Cesar Chavez's punch placement was very good. And he has something that he would do to fighters. Uh, his left hook to the body, the lever shot, it was trademark. But every once in a while, with certain fighters, when he began to turn the heat up on them, he would begin to cut the ring off. Because early in a fight, he might follow you around a little bit because he's getting used to your patterns, your movements, and things like that. But then he'll begin to cut the ring off on you and giving you less reaction time. He will shoot this short, straight right hand straight to your face, straight to your chin. Julio Cesar Chavez would do this. And that shot was debilitating because it snapped the head back. It was like a jab, but it was his straight right, a lead right hand. And he was extremely effective with that shot. That was a shot that Floyd Mayweather was very much susceptible to, and a lot of guys wouldn't throw it. Chavez was a big influence on Castillo. Castillo had same tendencies. Absolutely, Mark Pinkerton, salute and welcome to the chat, man. I don't know if you've just been out there listening and just decided to comment, but I appreciate you joining my live, brother. Yeah, we were talking about that. Castillo being in the gym with Chavez, he picked up a lot of his tendencies and fought like him. He gave you the illusion of Chavez when he was in there, but he just couldn't do what Chavez did as well. But he was definitely you could see that when they were in the same gym, he watched Julio because Julio had a certain way of doing certain things, and Castillo was trying to emulate that a lot. Which is, I mean, that's not a bad guy to try to emulate when you're in that gym with that kind of style. Um, Chavez was a good boxer too, man, but he just liked to mix it up. He was like a James Toney in the sense that he liked contact. Hitting him, Chavez didn't mind that. He didn't mind getting hit because he never got like hurt or anything. And the shots that he would take, they weren't debilitating shots. It was just contact. You know, he could roll with shots and things like that. He was very, Chavez had skill. He wasn't just a slugger or whatever. If you look at how he systematically broke guys down, Julio Cesar Chavez, man, he battered people. Just like you guys talk about Earl Spence today. That was Chavez at 130 and 140 pounds. He did that to people, and he banged them out real good. And don't forget, he beat Roger Mayweather pretty damn badly, man. He in 2 fights. And Roger Mayweather said, "Man, I hit that guy with some of the hardest shots I ever hit a man with." And that sucker just looked at me and kept coming. Chavez could take a shot. And when you got a beard and boxing, man, the other guy can be in trouble. Yeah, he gets some grief over his early resume, but when it came to good opponents, he beat most with ease. Absolutely. And the funny thing about, they talk about his all those fights he fought before he started fighting the name fighters in the US and stuff like that was you have to understand something. In Mexico, even though those guys were like nobodies to us and everything, a lot of those guys were tough, man. They didn't just go out and get knocked out in 2 rounds or something. Some of them gave him rounds. And the other thing about that was Chavez being as active as he was, that's how you get acclimated in boxing. You get comfortable in there. A lot of people talked about George Foreman in his second career, how comfortable he was in the ring, how calm, how, as an older fighter in there, because he realized something, you know, the fight is where it should be tough, not in the gym. So you don't beat yourself up in the gym. And George fought regular in his second career. He was fighting every couple of months, every 2 or 3 months, he was fighting like 3 or 4 times a year. And when you fight that often, or even as Chavez was doing, Chavez was fighting like every 60 days, if not sooner than that, early. When you fight that often, you get into a rhythm and flow where you're just sharp. And so you don't need to go back to the gym and do a lot of sparring. You can put on a calendar another fight date and keep your shape, keep running, get back in there in another 6 weeks and fight again. Because when you're that active, that's how you can get away with doing those things. Uh, it's very difficult now because, first of all, guys make far better paydays now. Excuse me, guys, I'm getting sleepy. Guys make better paydays now, and they don't look to stay in shape in between fights. And with longer distances between last scheduled fight and upcoming fight, it allows for weight gain, and you just kind of get out of that rhythm, you know, and it gets more difficult because, like I said, those better paydays and everything, guys find themselves not as hungry, you know. But a man that gets in there and he fights regularly, you'll find that, man, I if a fighter who has fought 4 times, maybe 5 times in a year, you can't take a guy that's fighting every 6 to 10 months and put him in with that guy because he's going to get his head knocked off. That active guy is going to slaughter him because he's in a rhythm. He's like, and even if he gets hit a good shot, he goes down, he get right back up because he's in shape. He's in fighting shape. He's ready to go, you know. I saw Foreman said somewhere that he felt better as a fighter in his 40s than he did in his 20s. Yeah, I would believe that. And I'll tell you why. Because when he was in his 20s and he was enjoying the luxury of what the fight game was bringing him, the money, the notoriety, the ladies, I'm sure, and all of that, um, the distractions are there. But as an older fighter, he knew these things already, and he knew what he had to do to take care of himself physically and mentally. And Big George always knew he could knock you on your behind. So it's like he had confidence in himself. I remember him speaking about his knockout punch. He had said it wasn't until like maybe he was almost in his 18th or 20th comeback fight because I think he had 23 fights before he challenged Holyfield for the title or something. But he said it was shortly before he fought Jerry Cooney because I know he fought Holyfield not long after that. But George said that his knockout punch came back later in his second career. It's like he said he had so many fights, and then that power punch that he used to rely on as a young man, it finally came back. You know what I think that was? I think it was all conditioning. It came to a point where he got into that rhythm again. And when he felt like he knew he could execute a certain kind of shot, he had the confidence to do it. And early on, yeah, he fought a few pugs, guys who just got him in shape and, things like that. Um, but later, when he started stepping up that opposition, he started facing guys like Burt Cooper and stuff like that. He knew he had to be sharp because he didn't want to be embarrassed by a younger guy. So Foreman would do the things he needed to do. A couple of funny fights I remember in his comeback. He fought one dude that looked like Apollo Creed because he had the shorts on like Apollo with the stars and stripes, and the dude looked like Carl Weathers too. I was like, George trying to fight Apollo Creed. Man, I was rolling when I saw that dude. It was on ESPN too. I was like, George fighting Apollo tonight. Man, that had me cracking up. I was rolling. And then he had this fight against Ken LaCusta. And that fight, he didn't like Acosta for some reason. He was like elbowing LaCusta and doing dirty tactics and stuff. I was like, there's the old George, because the old George used to do dirty stuff in the ring. And for some reason, he didn't like Ken LaCusta. He was doing some dirty stuff to him. And then Dwight Muhammad Cowie, George fought him. And I remember in one of the rounds, George hurt Cowie with a shot. And Cowie was only like 5'7" or maybe 5'6" with them long arms of a 6'3" guy, 6'4" guy. He had like an 80-inch reach and was 5'7". But anyway, uh, George hurt Cowie with a shot and stepped back like he was gonna let Cowie fall. But Cowie didn't go fall. He just kind of went into that little crouch that he normally do. And then George was stepping back and he hit George with a powerful shot, like an overhand right or a hook or something. And George wobbled. And George got mad. And he opened up on Cowie. You could look it up on YouTube, man. It's the funniest thing. Man, George Foreman opened up on Cowie, and Cowie wished he never had done that to George, man. George was he lit that brother up. But George was something else in his second career, man. That dude would come back and he give the funniest interviews after the fight, talking about he was an old granddad and these guys running from him and stuff. It was like, man, that was a great time, seeing him come back. And I was so proud of him that he won the heavyweight title at the age of, what was he, 40, 42, 44 or something. But yeah, that was great, man. Just seeing George do his thing and knowing that there was an attachment to an older era where he fought Ali and Ali won the title from him. So he was from Ali's era. So that meant that a man from those times could whoop these guys up today, man. You know, that was so cool to see that go about. Uh, let's see it. Pinkerton says, right, I know Holyfield beat him, but Evander had a tough night. Oh yeah, definitely, Mark Pinkerton. Holyfield, you know, I have I used to, man, back then when I was recording boxing with my VCR and stuff off the TVs and stuff, I used to record everything, press conferences, you know, the ESPN Sunday night interviews with the fighters before the fights and all of that. And I have the whole Holyfield form and build up before their fight, you know. And there was a great Sunday night with Charlie Steiner that George Foreman did, where Charlie Steiner went to George's farm and while he was training for Holyfield, and George was pulling jeeps around. He had like straps on it, you know, pulling cars up driveways and stuff, and he was like feeding his cows and chopping trees and all this stuff. And he was talking about Evander Holyfield. He was like, yeah, that guy's in the gym lifting weights and running and doing all this. Oh, I gotta run. I gotta fight George. I gotta. He's like, man, I'm sitting back. He's like, I'm chopping some wood over here. He's like, I'm gonna feed my horses. I'm gonna do this. He's like, but when we fight, he said, Evander gonna be, you know, all of that weightlifting and stuff. He gonna be tired. He's like, and I'm gonna be able to knock him out. He's like, 2 rounds. He's like, 2 rounds. I'm gonna knock Evander out. And he said, yeah, we can be mean mugging each other, you know, before the fight and everything. He was like, but after the fight, it's gonna be bang, it's all over. Then we hugging and everything. And he's like, and we could be friends after that. And it was so funny that he said all that in that interview because I'm gonna take you to a point in the fight. George had said he was gonna knock Holyfield out in 2 rounds. He kept saying it. Well, when the fight happened, George had Evander Holyfield in the second round, and he had forced Holyfield near the ropes. He had backed him up with a couple of jabs. And George, you know, Holyfield said this too about George's punches. He said, George could hit you with a shot and then he'll bump you, you know, with his body, you know, and that would knock you off balance because he was so big and strong. Well, he hit Holyfield with a couple of jabs that pushed Holyfield's backs to the ropes, right? And George threw this overhand right, and they show it on the fight. You watch the fight in between rounds when the second round is over. They show the replay. George bumped Holyfield back with a couple of jabs. He threw this overhand right that missed Holyfield's chin by like 2 inches, maybe less. It depends on what angle that you see that shot from. Because when Holyfield went into the ropes, his head was up like that. And George followed up with an overhand right. And it just missed Holyfield's chin. But then he followed with a left 45, that hook uppercut type deal. And it hit Holyfield on the side of the head, and Holyfield stumbled. And that was the point that I think that George was really trying to knock him out in the second round. And the funny thing about it was later Holyfield said when he got hit with that left hook, it put an instant lump on his head from George. But I don't think Holyfield realized how close he came to being knocked out by George Foreman in that second round because that right hand that missed his chin when it was up in the air. George did the right thing. He pushed him back with that jab where he jabbed him high on the head and his chin came up, and he followed up with that overhand right and it just missed. Man, Holyfield, if that punch would have hit Holyfield, he'd probably still be laying there in the Atlantic City Convention Center right now to this day. So, let's see. Mark Pinkerton says, laugh out loud. 90s boxing was great. Yes, it was, man. That was almost as good as the 70s, man. Hyphy says, some fighters break due to mental fatigue. Some feed off their opponents' mental fatigue. Give me some speech on how mental fatigue changes fighters and fights. Well, you know what, Hyphy? The thing about mental fatigue, um, there's an old saying, fatigue makes cowards out of men. That means that when you are tired, mentally tired, um, you kind of want to shut down. That is also connected to the old adage of about you're only as strong as your mind. Your mind can will you through a number of things, and if you're at a weak place in a mental state, you're not capable of being on the level. You're not capable of contending with what's before you. So, mental fatigue usually comes about from lack of rest, lack of oxygen, lack of proper diet, actually, mental fatigue. And it is very debilitating to people who are physical people, like athletes in particular. In the sport of boxing, it's everything because a guy who is no longer mentally sound or has never been mentally sound can't perform at a at his most at efficiency. If you look at Mike Tyson, um, before the loss to Buster Douglas, Mike was mentally strong, and he may not have been confident, but he was mentally strong and he was physically capable. After the Buster Douglas loss, Mike was not as confident, even though he had trouble with confidence. He was not as confident, and something happened with him mentally. Uh, I think the Razor Ruddock fights, the two fights against Razor Ruddock, took a lot out of him physically because Razor Ruddock was a strong man, but he didn't have a lot of skill and technique, and they just kind of banged on each other. But when he came out of prison, Mike was no longer the man that we knew that went in as the former heavyweight champion of the world. Mike became very mentally unraveled, and that was not a fun thing to witness. Over time, some people found his antics entertaining and thought, "Oh, Mike is a badass," and this and that. But I think that it really hurt him, and he didn't have enough people around him that really cared about him. I remember watching him in the corner of his fight against Lennox Lewis, and I think they were working on. No, I'm sorry. It was in the corner against Holyfield in their rematch before the ear biting. They were working on a cut on his eye, and he was like, ah, like he was screaming, ah, like it hurt him or something. And I was like, man, this used to be the baddest man on the planet. Listen to him, in the corner. He sounds like a punk, and I'm like, what happened to him? He wasn't the same. And in his fight against Lennox Lewis, I'll say that Emmanuel Stewart in Lewis's corner was yelling at Lewis, saying, "Stop playing around with this guy. He gonna hit you with something lucky and knock your ass out. You have to get out there and fight this guy." Blah blah blah. He actually hit Lewis in the chest. Get out there and do this. And in Tyson's corner, Tyson was telling I think it was Ronnie Shields or Teddy Roach, no, not Teddy Roach, Ronnie Shields in the corner. Tyson was like, "He hurt me." I was like, "What?" You know, Tyson, he said that after the first round. Lewis had hit him with an uppercut in the first round, and he said, "He hurt me." I'm like, dude, he's in there to hurt you. It's like you in there to hurt him. It's like, what are you talking about? But that just showed the mental state that he was at. He was nowhere near. He should not have been in there, because someone like that can get really hurt or killed, and it was sad, seeing that Mike in that position after knowing what he had been years before. I hated seeing that. But yeah, mental fatigue, man. It changes a fighter by um, giving him less options and giving him less choices to make in a fight. Like, you might be a little winded. Your right hand might be hurt, so you might have to use your left more, whatever. When you're tired mentally, whatever, you're gonna shut it down. You're not gonna do those things that you need to do to be efficient. So if you get to that point where you are mentally fatigued, the body can't keep up. You know, they go hat in hand. So that's definitely something to be considered, and which is why fighters need to maintain their edge by staying sharp, keeping in shape. When you keep in shape physically, when you know the things you got to do mentally, it all goes together. Becoming apathetic, becoming content. You got a little money in your pocket, you got a woman on your arm, whatever. She's a Playboy bunny and all of that. It's time to get out of there because somebody gonna knock your head off. You ain't focused. You ain't thinking about the things you need to be thinking about. So, that becomes a part of it. So, uh, Mark Pinkerton says Evander didn't get much credit for that win. He always overshadowed by Tyson. Yeah, absolutely. But he always chased Tyson in the sense that he knew that if I could beat that guy right there, then people will tell me I'm great. So that's what you got to have. Amazing, Mark Pinkerton. Think about that. That's a great segue into what we're talking about today's heavyweights. These guys, okay, Wilder is the man. He is. Why ain't none of these guys saying he's the man? I gotta get him. If I could get him on my record and say I whooped him, then people gonna give me that love. See, that's exactly the difference in those men of that era, the guys of today. The guys of today are just talking about, well, I made 30 million or 15 million, or I signed a contract for this many million. It's like that's all you hear. I'm never talking about fighters' purses. I don't care what they make. They're not going to share any of that money with me. I just want to see the matches. But when it comes down at the end of the day, they're going to make what they make. Professional athletes' salaries are through the roof anyway. I don't focus on the monetary aspect of things because it's not like it's going to affect me in that regard. If anything, I'm helping them because I'm buying the ticket to their fight, or I'm buying the pay-per-view or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of goofy and crazy, but that's the way it is. Uh Curtis Anderson, my brother. Hey man, what's going on? I'm glad to see you out there, Curtis. How you doing, brother? Appreciate you tuning in. This is my first live, man. I'm doing this live and talking about the state of the heavyweights and chopping it up with these brothers out here. Glad to see you on there, man. Thanks for tuning in. Pinkerton says Oliver McCall comes to mind. Mental health was his issue, I believe. Sad. Well, you know what? Oliver McCall, man, he didn't have no mental problems. He had a drug problem, but he didn't have no mental problems. Oliver McCall was here in Chicago, man, and I know the guy. It's like the Atomic Bull, man. That guy, he's the kind of guy you can hit him in the head with a baseball bat, man. He ain't going nowhere. That's who he was. But yeah, he had some drug problems, and they put him in there with Lennox Lewis. Don King being the type of guy he was. That's one thing about Don King, man. If you were in his stable and it was time for you to fight, Don would make you fight, man. He didn't care. You in rehab. We're gonna get you out of rehab this Saturday and you fighting next weekend. That's Don King. And Sean Bay Mitchell, he was a good fighter. and he had a knee problem. Don King was like, "You fighting, man?" And Sean Bay was like, "But my knee ain't ready to go." He was like, "You put a knee brace on there and you get your butt in the ring and fight." Don was that man, so it was like he would make guys fight when they wasn't ready to go. So Oliver McCall had to get in there. Don had a clock ticking, and see, I think the way Don was trying to set it up, he was trying to have all those belts available for Tyson when he came out of prison so he could be a unified champion again, undisputed. But it didn't work out for him because McCall ended up losing that WBC back to Lennox. Um, and no, I'm sorry. McCall lost it to Bruno. But Bruno had WBC. Uh, Selden had the WBA, and I think it was Michael Moore had the IBF or something like that. But they were all, the belts were separated again, and that's what Don was trying to set it all up for Tyson, but it didn't work out. He just got that WBC back from Frank Bruno, and then that was it. So, but yeah, man, that's what it was when it came down to that. And these guys today, they don't even want to face each other. But I'm pulling for Wilder. I want to see him do great things. And if he can't get the fights against these guys across the pond, hey man, just start going through the rest of the division and knocking these guys' heads off. Make it like 78 said, he suggested a bum of the month type deal. Every month he fighting somebody. And I don't care if they ranked high or low, just take them out. And guess what? People gonna tune in to Deontay because he's exciting. He has a charisma. He has a knockout punch, and people want to see knockouts. And these other guys, let them dance around the rosy and act up posturing and taking pictures with their muscles and stuff, all of that stuff, man, talking about their mental deficiencies and drug problems. Well, we got a heavyweight champion over here that don't have none of those kind of issues. We got a guy over here that knock your head off and pat you on the back and tell you he love you and go get the next one. That's what people want to see. They don't want all that other foolishness. We got enough foolishness in the world, in the country, in the White House, and all of this stuff. We don't need all that foolishness. We just want to see our sport upheld in a proper manner. That's what we want to see. See, Stormy, when we had HBO and Showtime, only the promoters had to work together. HBO was where it was at. Big fights had to be made. Now, too many networks and platforms. Not many fighters want to compete. Well, it's really too many belts because all the networks want to do is have championship fights. This is for this title, this is for that title. When they used to have the intercontinental titles, the little titles guys who were like prospects and contenders could win before becoming a world champion, that was okay. But now you got the super title and the regular title and the extra belt and this belt and all these alphabet belts. Man, that's ruined the sport, man. How can you have 10 champions? That's ridiculous. Is it 10 champions in the UFC in the same weights and stuff? No. Huh? You got the good guy and you got the guy that got whooped. Huh? It's like and contenders fought each other and fight each other. It's like these contenders today, they hang around to get title shots. Huh? It's like these guys today, they don't even learn how to be a polished fighter before acquiring some kind of belt, man. You know, guys sitting up talking about I'm the this that champion of the world, and this guy over here saying, but I'm the you be this of the world. Like what? All these belts. Okay, well, why don't you two guys, since y'all champs, why don't y'all fight each other? Oh well, I don't know. You have to talk to my manager about that. You have to. I don't know. My network, I'm signed to this exclusive deal. Exclusive deal for what, man? To rip people off? Watching you fight cab drivers and stuff, man? Come on, man. We don't want to see that stuff. It's ridiculous, man. Ridiculous. So back to Don King. We'll never see cars like he put on, stacked all the time. Yeah, Don used to have one thing. Don would have a major fighter in the main event, and you saw three, sometimes four world championship fights before the main event, man. And it was like always some good fights. It's like with the Don King, especially his pay-per-views, man, not just his like Showtime fights or whatever, but because his fights were mostly on Showtime. A few were on HBO. Um, Don's fights were usually the fights where you got to see all the up and coming guys too. He would put together some wonderful cards. And most of the fights that I have on video and stuff that I recorded off of his events, excuse me, Don put on some really good shows, man. He put on some really, really good shows. I remember when Evander Holyfield fought, I don't know if it was Buster Douglas. It was either the Evander Holyfield fight with Buster Douglas or it was a Mike Tyson fight with Razor Ruddock, one of the two fights that there was an undercard fight with Riddick Bowe and Burt Cooper. And I'll never forget that because Burt Cooper, he was up and down. And in that first round, he jumped on Riddick Bowe pretty good. And it was like, oh, Bowe is, in trouble. But Bowe came out and stopped him in the second round. But, he had Eddie Futch in his corner. Eddie Futch told him the exact things to do. Bowe went out, stopped Burt Cooper in the second round. But in that first round, Burt Cooper jumped on Riddick Bowe, man. But again, those were the kind of fight cards you would see, you know, quality fighters. And Don always had Chavez on the card. It was like whether Chavez was the headliner or the co-main event, or he was just, fighting a guy on the undercard or whatever. But great cards. Let's see. Boudreaux says, yeah, way too many belts. It's confusing. Absolutely, man. Mark Pinkerton, right. Hyphy. Today, a prospect doesn't face a legit threat until a title shot. Can you give us some speech on how prospects used to face each other and some memorable fights between prospects? Um, yeah, man. Excuse me, guys. Forgive me. Yeah, the way guys used to match up with prospects. See, that's where shows like the old Tuesday night fights used to showcase guys, the Freddie Pendletons and the what was his name? Jorge Paez and those guys, they would fight on Tuesday night fights, and you get to see these guys and they would they would be climbing up and they won USBA titles and stuff like that. And next thing within 6 months, they were fighting on a Don King card or something for a title, Julian Jackson or Mike McCallum or somebody they were fighting. And but the guys would hone their craft and there will always be crossworld fights too, like, two guys facing each other. I remember when Burt Cooper and Ray Mercer fought on CBS on a Sunday afternoon, I think it was. Man, Ray Mercer, he dropped Burt Cooper in the first round. He thought it was going to be an easy day, and Burt Cooper got up and fought life and death with Ray Mercer the rest of the 10 rounds and left Ray Mercer with a big, badly bruised jaw. I think his jaw was broke. They never said anything about it. But Ray Mercer's jaw looked like he had a grapefruit inside of it, man. It was like those kind of matches where these guys would meet up and face each other, crossroad type fights, and contenders who had, contenders and former champs who were kind of on the downside facing young guys coming up, and they, torches being passed and stuff like that. Um, those were always crowd friendly and fan friendly fights in the sport because people, the fights were still competitive because you have a guy who was once there against a guy who's trying to get there and is feeling his way through the process, and sometimes that was a great recipe for fights. And it gave those guys who were no longer at the top of the sport, it gave them paydays, man. It gave them a chance to earn a living. And you're not seeing that anymore. You know, um, there are fighters who should still be around to this day that we're not seeing because nobody's calling them out and nobody's offering them a payday and things like that. And that's kind of sad, especially when they throw this money around to certain individuals. I said I wasn't gonna name drop, and I'm not, but throwing those throwing those paydays out to certain individuals that don't deserve those type of paydays for the quality of opposition that they're facing. It's ridiculous, and the fans should have something to say about that. Let's see. I was a Bo fan. If he would have fought and beat Lewis, he'd have been top 15 of all time. Threw his belt in the trash. Shame. Yes, uh, Mark Pinkerton, absolutely. And Kurt says, I remember that. Yes, man. I said that earlier in this broadcast that if Riddick Bowe had never thrown that belt in the trash can, we would have had and faced Lennox Lewis. We would have had seen the guy who would have been the heavyweight of the '90s, the winner of that fight, because they were both at a point in their careers. They were at the same level. They had the same type of heat on them and behind them. And the fans, whether you were for Lewis or whether you were for Bowe, would have gotten behind that one champ because that guy would have been the best in the world. And he would have taken on all comers after that, and he could have made his legacy in the sport. People wouldn't have even talked about Tyson as much. But because the heavyweight division remained fragmented for so many years after Holyfield lost to Bowe, with the belts being split up again and stuff like that, you know, that's why Tyson's name kept getting bandied about because people were like, well, Tyson could beat that guy. Well, wait till Tyson come back. He's the real champ. You know, if Holyfield would have beat Bowe, people wouldn't have talked about Tyson as much. But people didn't have that confidence in Holyfield because they didn't feel he could beat Tyson anyway. So when he lost to Bowe, it was like, well, he would have lost to Tyson anyway. But you never know until guys get in the ring and face each other. But maybe if Bowe would have been the guy to face Tyson when he got out of prison and got himself back going in his career and everything, maybe that could have been a super mega fight that we would have seen. But it wasn't meant to be. And Bowe has a lot to do with that. And we could blame Bowe and point our fingers at him and make fun of him and everything to this day because he threw that belt in the garbage. He didn't have to listen to Rock Newman. Where's Rock Newman at today? Huh? He made money off of Riddick Bowe, but where's he at today? Oh, throw that belt away. We don't need that belt. We still got 2, 3 other belts. No, you messed up that man's legacy and he listened to you, and now he gotta walk around angry now, worried the fact that he listened to you throwing his belt in the garbage. But hey, Bo, you didn't have to throw your belt in the garbage. You could have kept it on your waist. Told Lennox, come get it. Huh? But you didn't. I think Bo was done wrong in his gold medal match versus Lewis. Oh, absolutely, Bo Drew. I think in that fight, and this is the funny thing about the amateurs, man. It's like they will stop fights and disqualify people at the wrong times all the time in the amateurs. If you wasn't just outpointing somebody 100 to 2 or something, it's like, man, you could throw a shot and the ref say, I call break and you hit him anyway, you're disqualified. That's what I hated about the Olympics. They did that to Roy Jones Jr., they did it to Riddick Bowe, they did it to Evander Holyfield. I mean, come on, man. The best of our fighters, they did that too, taking these guys' opportunity away from them like that. What a shame, man. Those people should be ashamed of themselves doing that. Hyphy says, name two good fighters of the past that were good, but you just couldn't stand and never could stand them. Wow. You know what? I don't never really think about it like that, man. But I'll say, let me say, uh, two good fighters from the past that were good, but you just couldn't stand and could never stand them. Let me think about that one for a minute because I'm sure there's somebody, but I got so many fighters in my head. Two fighters that I couldn't stand. Uh, One fighter I could not stand. Uh, that's kind of hard, because the thing about when you love boxing, man, you understand everything that comes with it. There are different personalities, there are different styles, there are different people with charisma or whatever, and it all makes for a great mixing pot that makes your love of the sport, go deep. It's like the styles. Um, I think there was a heavyweight on Tuesday Night Fights. He used to fight all the time. I think his name was what was that guy's name? If Curtis is still out there, Kurt, you might remember this guy. He was a heavyweight on Tuesday Night Fights. James Thunder. I didn't like that dude, man. He was like a Samoan cat or whatever. I did not like that dude. He would come out there and they were building him up as this big puncher and everything. And that dude got killed, man. That was like but I hated that dude when I think back on him because he was just a big muscular guy. James Thunder, Tuesday Night Fights tonight takes on, some Joe Schmo or whatever, and then he got his head handed to him. Then there was another heavyweight named Alex Garcia, the same thing, Mexican dude, big Mexican. He had a big punch that they would throw him in there with these cab drivers and stuff. And then he got in there with some guy that had a 50-50 record, and the dude knocked him down and then knocked him out. I was rolling, man. I was like, this guy, this guy, they put him in there and he finally got his butt whooped. But yeah, that was some good stuff, man. Tuesday Night Fights, man. Galata, yeah, that's another guy. Fought out of Chicago here in the Windy City Gym. I knew Galata as well. He was crazy, man. That dude right there, he could be a serial killer. I mean, seriously, he's that much of a nut job. Uh, Andrew Galata. Yeah, not a nice guy. Not a nice guy at all. So yeah, Bernard Hopkins frustrates me when he does his head down rush in tactics. Basically, headbutting. What do you think about him doing that? Yeah, Drew, the thing about Bernard Hopkins is that, him being one of those fighters, again, trained by the great Bowie Fischer, that, his his style, old school, he learned tactics to do in there. But if you have good coaching and training, there are counters to what he does. And he wouldn't be as effective against certain individuals if he tried that mess, because those guys would know what to do. Like a James Toney. A James Toney would know exactly what to do and how to handle a Bernard Hopkins. See, Bernard Hopkins, he fought rough on the edges and the fringes of fights where he knew that the guy he was facing didn't have the experience to deal with certain things, you know, and that's how he has success over them. Even when you take a guy like Tarver, you remember when Bernard Hopkins fought Tarver, he kind of took Tarver apart. Well, it was because, as good as Tarver boxer Tarver was, he didn't have the experience of the know-how. He didn't have that toolbox of how to deal with a guy like Bernard Hopkins. But Bernard Hopkins, the best way to beat a fighter like him is to box him. You have to box him. Hopkins, if you notice a lot of the tactics he would do, he'd get in close and maul you and things like that, and hit you low, hit you on the hip when the ref is on the other side, and pull your arm, twist your arm and stuff. A lot of stuff to get you out of the fight mentally. And then he could execute what his game plan was to do to you tactically, in the fight, whether it's to hit you here, jab, whatever, however he's going to fight you. And, knowing that, you have to be able to counter that. When you know these kind of things about that type of fighter before you face him, and you know what to do against him, because there's a couple of things you could do to him and he'll knock all that mess off right away. And fighters like him that do that, they try dirty tactics or whatever. Yes, and you know what to do to counter it. Guess what? He'll never do it again. There was a great fight between Evander Holyfield and Michael Dokes. And one of the things Michael Dokes was doing to Holyfield early was hitting him low below the belt. First time he hit Holyfield low, it was near the bell. Bell ring, ding, bang, hit him right in the cup, And then a few other times he was hitting Holyfield on the hip, and Holyfield kept pulling his trunks up, And Dokes kept hitting him down there. Then one round, he hit Holyfield low one too many times. And Holyfield's corner had told the ref, hey, he hitting low, man. He hitting low. So Holyfield wound up, and Holyfield threw an uppercut to Michael Dokes' groin, deep, almost under. He almost hit him so low under there, he could have hit him in the back of his butt cheeks from the front side. So that's how low Holyfield hit the guy. And guess what? Michael Dokes didn't throw another low blow the rest of the fight and got knocked out. Huh? That's what happens. When you know what to do, you can shut all that down. That's why in the ring, it's like I say, if you've heard me on other channels and I'm talking it up with other guys and I'm saying, these fighters of the day, they got titles and everything, and they got more knockouts than they have actual fights, and then they don't know how to fight, and they win in titles. What does a guy do when he get in there and he hit the guy with his best shot and can't get him out of there, and the guy keep coming? What do? Huh? You ain't gonna knock everybody out. Just keep on fighting. You ain't gonna knock everybody out. Deontay Wilder, who knocks everybody out, he knocks Tyson Fury out, but not knock him out, right? He didn't knock everybody out. He didn't knock Bermane Stiverne out the first time they fought. So guess what? You're just not gonna knock everybody out. So you have to have an answer to how you're gonna win the fight. That's why people talk about Amir Khan and his fight against Terence Crawford and how it's going to be a hard fight for Crawford and this and that. I'm like, it's not going to be a hard fight for Crawford because Crawford is a proven winner. Khan is the opposite. He's not a proven winner. He's proven you he can lose. And people talk about him losing by knockout, but he's not the guy who's been able to step up to a certain level of opposition and win convincingly. Crawford has. So how can you go against a winner against someone who's proven to not be a winner? So someone posed a question once to me about like, well, how do you perceive, Crawford winning? I said, by winning. He ain't got to knock him out to win, you know? And the thing is, he's not going to let Amir Khan beat him in a decision. So guess what? If Crawford wins, it's going to be either by knockout, TKO, or unanimous decision. How will Amir Khan win? I don't know because he hasn't proven to me that he can. Now, if he upset Crawford or whatever, that'll be the first time. But I don't expect that to happen, you know. So Thunder KO'd Grimsley Kurt first punch. I remember when instructions being given, I went to the fridge to grab a Coke. Came back and he was celebrating. Yeah, that I remember that fight too, man. That was like crazy, man. That was like what 3 seconds. The bell went ding. He walked out to the center ring. He hit the guy, knocked him out. It was over. Yeah, man. Kurt says, yeah, that's true. Yeah, man. Tuesday night fights were crazy, man. And that old stupid Marv Albert and Sean O'Grady, man. Sean O'Grady trying to crack those corny jokes, man, in between the fights and stuff. Those were the good old days, man. Great days, great times for boxing, man. Did you notice how much Sugar Ray Leonard hit Floyd Sr. in his cup on his hip and in the back of the head in their fight, and the referee let him do it like it is legal? I haven't watched that fight in a while, but I'm sure that you know, Mayweather Sr. was doing some things to Sugar Ray too. I mean, I don't think those two guys liked each other when they fought, but yeah, hey man, like I said, when guys are doing stuff and the ref don't want to, handle it, there are ways that you can handle it. You know, you can step on a guy's foot and hold him right there so he can't move and fire on him. You know what I mean? What the ref gonna do? Watch your feet. Hey, there's a lot of things you could do in there, man. Sugar Ray Leonard, when he fought Hagler, he wanted to use the thumbless gloves because he was worried about Hagler thumbing him in the eye. And Hagler didn't thumb people in the eye. Hagler put his fist in people's eye. It's like, what are you gonna do? Thumbless gloves. Okay, whatever, Ray. You know. Yeah, Mark Pinkerton says the 90s. Yes, sir. Boy, that was a great time for boxing, man. The 90s. That was like a resurgence, man. Michael Nunn, Meldrick Taylor, all these guys with fast hands, Buddy McGirt, Pernell Whitaker, Hector Camacho. Man, I'll tell you a guy I watched, Emmanuel Augustus. Record wasn't that good, but entertaining, and he could fight. Oh yeah, man. Emmanuel Augustus was the kind of guy. I think he could fight a guy on 7-day notice, man, and he get in there and give you the fight of your life, man. That dude was something else. They call him the drunken master because he be in there moving around and doing the crazy stuff. But yeah, Augustus. He gave Floyd Mayweather a pretty tough fight too on his way up the ladder. Yeah. Hyphy says, do you look at Nassim Hamed as a hype job? Yes, he was very flashy and could keep your attention inside and out of the ring, but Barrera skilled him so badly, and that was the end of him. Well, you know what? It's funny you mentioned that because there's one way to look at that and one way only. Hype jobs. You know, Kevin Kelly could have did the same thing that Barrera ended up doing to him, but Kevin Kelly was like not disciplined. He let the event get to him more, and he got into a fight where he allowed Hamed to take the play away from him, and he ended up knocking Kevin Kelly out, stopping him. But Kennedy McKinney also was in there with them, and again, guys like Hamed who are so unorthodox, and he didn't have good boxing skills. He had power, but you know that's when an orthodox fighter is supposed to take him to school, man. Take him to school. And none of those guys, with the exception of Barrera, would do that to Hamed. And I think the only reason that Barrera was able to do what he did to Hamed was due to a little fight that he had with a gentleman by the name of Junior Jones. And I think my man Kurt Anderson, if you're still out there, my brother, can you make a comment on Junior Jones and Barrera when they fought? Because Junior Jones made Barrera uh, go back go back to school with his boxing. Yeah. And when Barrera went back to school with his boxing, that's when he defined his skills with his jabs, his right hands, and things like that. And he became more of a complete fighter. By the time he came around to face Hamed, it was easy pickings for him because that's exactly what Barrera did. He boxed the boots off of Naseem Hamed. What a beautiful fight. I loved it. I was cheering for Barrera every round. And then in that round where he finally grabbed him and ran his head into the corner of the ring post, I was celebrating. I was like, there you go. Because he gave him exactly what he deserved. You come over here with all that clowning and, the dancing and the hyping and all of that stuff. Man, this is boxing, man. You're going to get your head knocked off tonight, sucker. And that's what he got. Got his head knocked off. I thought Barrera knocked his head off his body a couple of times. Hamed spent the round and looked like his head was on a yo-yo string or something. He gave him exactly what he deserved. Yeah, Curtis, that's what I'm saying. But it was Junior Jones that made Barrera go back to the drawing board. That's why I was saying that's why that fight was so important to Barrera's career. That's why I say I think if Kurt remembers correctly, a brother by the name of Junior Jones gave Barrera reason to get his act together. Because Barrera used to go in there hunting people down, like he was Chavez or something. But Junior Jones said, "Not today, Charlie." hmm Bojo says, "Remember when Pacquiao avoided Raheem?" Well, hey man, Pacquiao, they put him in there, and he made a fan base and everything. He was exciting for a lot of people in the sport. He injected a lot into the sport for a time when there was a lull. So Pacquiao was a necessary person, man, and I respect whatever his accomplishments are in the ring. So you know, do you look at Naseem Hamed as a hype job? Yes, he was very flashy and could keep your attention inside and out the ring, but Barrera skilled him so badly, and that was the end of him. Yeah, I read that one already. I think Jones was pound for pound guy at one time. He was good. Chin hurt him against the elite guys, though. Curtis, yeah. I met Jones a while back. He was really cool. Yeah. Well, you know what? It's funny, man. The great thing about the sport of boxing, man, is you you have to know that if you're going to have any length of time in the sport, and I think Curtis, my man, is out there, he could attest to this. Um, one of the one of the biggest um reasons that a person can have longevity in the sport is when they are a complete fighter, a complete boxer can have extended time in the sport. Sluggers, brawlers, punchers, those guys can come and go. But a good technical boxer, he can be in there for the long haul because he can rely on his skills to get him through. You know, how to move, how to jab, how to slip, how to, catch punches, parry punches, how not to take shots cleanly and things like that. Those are the guys who can, be around. So Hamed was more style than substance. Absolutely, I agree with that. Mark Pinkerton says Pac avoided Nate Campbell after Nate beat Juan Diaz. Remember that, Stormy? Oh yeah. Well, you know what? There's always some fights that we could look at and say, "Wow, this guy he got away. He didn't get that guy or whatever." But I look at it like this. Sometimes the fights we want to see, they don't happen, but I would rather see the guys fight. Let's just say you got one guy, he's a champ, right? And there's about five monsters in the division. If he fights two or three of them, well, let's say three of them, I can kind of give him a pass if he fights three of them. If he fights only one of them, then I'm kind of like, okay, what about those other guys? If he fights two of them, you kind of, you look at him. But like I said, he fights three of them. It's like, okay, you give him a pass because that's the thing, you know. So yeah, man, you want to see them fight the best. You want to see them, clean out divisions, things like that. So, but yeah. So Mark Pinkerton says, "Good night, fellas." Curtis says, "Go watch Tony versus McCallum 1. That's a great technical fight." Yes, sir. A very, very good technical fight. I've got it on my queue to watch because you were talking about it in another stream. I got it on tape, but it's on a VHS tape, and I don't feel like pulling out the old VHSs. So I'll pull it up on YouTube and watch it. But that's always a good fight to look at. James Toney and Mike McCallum. You can even turn the color off and watch that fight and make it look like you're watching a fight from the 40s or 50s. So yeah. So well, hey, brothers, I'll tell you something, man. I heard Mark Pinkerton said good night. It is getting a little late. I've been on here. My goodness, it says I've been on here for 2 hours. So that's my first live stream, and I was on here for 2 hours, and I had a couple of fellas on here chopping it up with me, and I love it, man. This is all right. I really appreciate the support this evening, my fellas, and please tell other people about me and let them know that the Stormy B man is out here, and I'm not trying to step on any toes or anything. I'm just trying to contribute, in a positive manner. Curtis, I know you weren't there early on, but I wanted to say, while I got your ear, that what I want to say is what my intent here this evening. I was saying that when I talk about the heavyweight division in particular, and even some of the other divisions as well, I'm going to stop mentioning certain names in the sport of those individuals who don't want to make the best fights. I will talk about, you know, number one through whatever, but and that's what they'll get from me, numbers. If there's an announcement that they've signed to fight someone, I can mention that or whatever, but I'm gonna do my part in not promoting no further of these men who don't want to face the best in the sport. And the best will get their praise here, they'll get their acknowledgement, but the ones who have no interest in that, I have no interest in spreading their names. So, and especially some of these promotional companies and groups or individuals who are soiling the sport so terribly as well. I don't have time for that. I won't be doing comments on that kind of activity, only what's positive and progressive in the sport. So I just want to say that if you catch that early part of the cast, that's what we were talking about initially. Um, but as I get ready to sign off this evening, I want to say thank you, fellas, for tuning in and supporting me. Uh, I love everybody out there and want everybody to, continue to inspire me because I would like to do that and be that voice along with others to sing the song of the sport of boxing. So, Lawrence Williams, what's good, my brother? Thanks for checking in. We're just about to sign off here, my first live stream, man. And if you get a chance, you could go back and watch it. We did 2 hours tonight, and that's kind of amazing for my first live stream. So I appreciate you checking in on me, my brother, and hopefully you can go back and listen to what we said, what I had to offer, and you can leave some comments. You can critique it, give it thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. Just let me know what you think of it. And I want to say shout out to the LDBC and the boxing community, Lions Den boxing community. The guys have helped refocus my love for the sport again because of all the different people who have been out there and putting out content and information and positive information and the networking and even me learning these great people who support like you all that are here this evening. I love that. I look forward to talking with you and meshing our relationships and growing stronger. So with that, I would like to say this is Stormy B, man. God bless you all, be with you. And until we meet again, my friends, I'll say good night. Peace.